So the idea of this session is to again create awareness of the controls. We have the PnP reusable controls and property pane controls, and there's still a lot of people that don't know a lot about them or don't use them very often or not aware of they have. And the idea was to just keep showcasing them, so create awareness and basically just transmit how simple and powerful these things are. So let me, for the new ones, if you just search for PnP controls or property controls or reusable controls, you will easily find two websites. So the SPFx property controls and SPFx controls React. The names pretty much give it away. Installation is as simple as scrolling down the page. That's at least what I do. Copy my command line, paste, run, then close the page. I did that already, so I have an Hello World web part project set up here, where I have the two dependencies. So what I did on this project was simply install the dependencies, and then I also came here and I'm passing the context of the web part into a component. You can see here I added a property, and I'm just passing the web part context so I can use it on the controls. Nothing else on the project. So let's go to one of the controls that I just randomly picked, EnterpriseTermPicker. And just so you have an idea how powerful and super easy these things are to add, we can scroll down to the usage, and we can just paste this thing on the web part. This is really strange for me because it's so zoomed in. We need one property for the selection. So we grab the import, we grab the property. And we grab the control. So because it's a property control, we just go down to the area where we declare the controls, copy and paste, check if we need to update anything, save. I know I have metadata, a term group and a term set that have those names. So if we now go back here, and this is our sample web part, and all I did was just copy the control, and we have a term picker. Didn't even have to figure out anything. All you need to do now is just refine any properties you might need, make it multi-select, or it's already true, but change the term group, term ID, whatever. Play with the configurations if the default is not what you need. So next, icon picker control. So that gives us a picker for icons from Fluent UI that you can pick. You can come here, same thing again, copy the import. Copy the code. We now say we need a property for this icon picker. Now save. Our web part now has an icon picker by default. Sorry, on the properties. Am I saying? There you go. And if you need a configurable way to pick an icon on a web part or something like that, copy and paste the code. It takes a few minutes. Another one, I will probably just skip this one for the sake of time, but it's the PropertyFieldRoleDefinitionPicker, which allows you to select roles in the site. So you can select, for example, on a given web part, if it has something to do with viewers or editors or something like that, if it should behave differently depending on the role of the user, you can configure that through the web part, for example. This one I will show you just because this is extremely powerful control, one of my favorites, and I use it very often, which is the collection data. And you can create a configurable area where you can define this data structure that you want to copy. So on the properties of the control, I'm just using the default that was on documentation, but I think you can figure out from here that the fields are defined here in a very simple way. You can have field types. We have string, number, and dropdown for this example. You select the options. When you put this on the page, all this data is saved as a collection in the web part properties. So if you're doing, for example, something like rendering links, this is insanely fast compared to storing links on a web part, for example, because you don't need to go and retrieve them. When the page loads, they're there. So you basically get a collection of items you can define with the properties that you specify, and then you can save that. And when the page loads, all the data that you define there is pre-default on the page. If we now go to the property controls, which is the content that you render on, for example, web parts or extensions, same type of installation, come here, copy, paste, close, unless you want to type all the name. The collection of controls is huge, like in the property controls. It's growing every month pretty much. It's a lot of effort to review these PRs, but it's really nice to see the people contributing with so much stuff. So if we now go to our PSX control, just import it. And oops. Yeah, I'm there. And now if we just, so here we looking at the security trimmed control. This is a control that lets you control who sees the content within the control on the page. And it can support multiple scopes. So for example, you can show anything inside this control when the user has specific permissions on the site, for example, view pages. You can look at a specific list or a remote site if you provide the URL, or a remote list. So this is extremely powerful to create experiences that depend on the permissions on the user, and it's extremely simple to use. I've done it a few times. It doesn't add any complexity to the project. All you do is just go to your project, paste that in, and everything you want to render is there inside this control. So basically anything you declare here will automatically be permission controlled. Well, not permission controlled, more or less, security controlled. So if we save that, this does not render any content. It will just show or hide what you had inside. So we can quickly show on the page. When it's at the end, it's very small. So let me just now mention something else for people that are new to this. Please go to both websites and check the controls section at the top. There is a lot of controls there. For testing this locally, fork the repository. The repository is actually an SPFx web part project. It's very simple, and it's the same structure that you will be used to work with. You can use npm link. I can quickly show you here. There is controls test web part, which I can run very, very quickly. There is a controls test web part, which is a huge playground. The project is very, very large. The first time you look at it, you may find a little bit lost, but the structure is not actually that complex. So we have a services folder where most of the services are located. Some controls have services inside the root folder. So when you look at source and then controls, and each control has its own folder, and the services may or may be without that folder, may or may not be inside the control folder. They may be under the shared services folder. There are also hooks, and then we have extensions and web parts to test some of these controls. If you want to contribute, don't be afraid about things like coding styles. Try to maybe have a look first and see how things are done, but each control is basically unique. It was done. There are people who contributed with lots of controls, and even from the same people we see, you can tell the evolution of coding over time. They just getting better and better. But there is no restrictions on specific code styles that you need to follow. This is supposed to be open. You contribute the way you can do things, and you know if there are things that we think you should be changed just to align with some broad things on the project, we will let you know on the pull request, but any pull request is welcome. So to test this locally, we can run it like a web part called serve. You can go to your website. I'm going to do it on the workbench now. And we can get rid of that. Okay, it doesn't like it. And there is a web part called controls test. When you add it to the page, it will take a little bit because there's so much stuff in it. And you can see there is a huge amount of controls. Most of the controls will be here. You will notice that some of them may not work for you by default. So for example, the term picker may be using a term ID that is from someone who did a test and left the term ID that he was using. You can just change it locally whenever you need to test a control that doesn't work for you. For example, MyTeams is working for me because it doesn't have any properties. I actually forgot to show this control. I'll show in a second. So this control, like the other ones, was import and just copy paste. There are a few additional things you can configure, but most of them, there are examples here in the documentation that you copy paste and they work straight away. And then you can look at what properties at the bottom of the documentation. There's generally a table with all the properties that are supported, if they are, it's easier if I show, if they are required or not, and the description and so on. So on these ones, you have under controls, under web parts, there is a controls test component that is on the web part that the project contains. And then here you can do anything you want. Just be mindful to not maybe checking changes here that are only specific to you. If it's something new, by all means, no one cares. Whoever is going to change it next will have to adjust it to their configurations. Or even if you want to make this more easy to test, feel free. At the moment, it's just a massive playground where people dump things. Just try not to duplicate things too much. Otherwise, the performance here will be very, very slow. So you have all these huge amount of controls you can play with. Initialization for some of the controls, like the term picker or the tree view, which requires a tree hierarchy. It's defined here. You can find the control, look at import, look for the control and see what you need to configure. Then on the page.
Joel, if you don't mind, I'm gonna shuffle your demo a bit. And you had the clean web part there waiting. One of the most used controls in these React controls by far is the web part title control, because that should be basically provided by us as a Microsoft, but it isn't. But the code which we have as a web part control in here for sure is the most widely used one by the community and customers and partners. Can you show how do you take that control, specifically just the web part control on that clean? You had that a bit more simplified project.
The other one. Okay, yeah.
So I'm putting you and I'm throwing you a challenge live. This is not prepared, so let's see if we can actually make this work.
I think Alex actually showed that one. I generally show that one, but I was under the impression Alex showed it, but I think it's absolutely fine to do it again. So let me just. Hello world, and so on the web part, property pane and web part title. So the import, and it's not that one.
I love your resolution, by the way, in the computer. So
it's so big for me now.
Yes.
I almost at the point where I just feel like I should step back a little bit.
No, but it's better for us now that you're zooming it. But it's I can imagine that the text is now with the size of a cat, so it's good.
Yes. So on actually, I need to pass a few more things here. So I need the display mode, and I need the update property. So 1 second.
Yeah, we need to have a property where we are storing the title of a web part.
That was a name, yeah. So the reason why we need this is because we are on the component, and when we save, the property needs to be sent back to the web part for storing. And I'm lost. What else do I need? With property, I have it. And I need the display mode.
The display.
Oh, and I need the title as well. Sorry.
Yeah, this is what happens when we throw a live question and a request, live coding with more than 150 people in the call. This is really cool. No pressure, Joel. So you can make this work.
Sorry. I need, yeah, this needs to be a function. I think it's somewhere here. No, we need to get this. I'm pretty sure, oh, there you go. I'm pretty sure I copied this multiple times without having to code it. And now on the web part, yeah, I just need the display mode as well.
Yeah, and the display mode is the one which is basically natively provided by Microsoft, which you can say that, oh, am I in an edit mode or am I in a read-only mode? So because the experience is different when you're editing the web part versus when you are just viewing the data.
I need.
And the web part title is the one that allows you to click in the title and edit the title while instead of going to the property pane.
This is display mode. Okay.
We can do this.
And I need the title, which I don't have here as well. So we need a title. You did choose one that requires more changes. And now I think we have everything. No, we don't. We need to pass the update property as well.
But all of what is needed, all of this is basically always in the documentation in the docs. So in this case, as Joel is mentioning, this bit of a larger set of changes because we need to have a property where the web part title is being stored, and that's stored within the web part data and blob. So there's a bit of an additional set of configurations to be done here.
Yeah, and just there you go. So pass it the value, and I think that's it.
Crossing fingers, we can make this work. Live coding challenges are always fun.
Yeah, this one is a bit more tricky because I didn't. Oh wait, I was in.
Yeah, it's in the
Get rid of this. Yeah, when we go into edit mode, we then press heartily, and we can preview. There we go.
Yep. Now, of course, the title of a web part should not be the last one, but again, that's a styling thing, of course, from a designing perspective, and we can flip it as the first component. Sorry, Joel, for putting you on the spot there,
No
but
worries.
it's. I know that you can pull this off because you are maintaining those controls as well. But really, really cool. And as said, by far the web part title is by far the most widely used control from these controls because it provides the similar experience that a lot of the out-of-the-box web parts in SharePoint are having as a overriding the title.
Yeah, just again, this is more complex because we have the title on the web part properties, then we need to pass the title to the component, then we show it here. If we add it, we then need to send it back for saving on the web part properties. So it needs to go back and forth. That's why we need to go through all those loops. That's not the case for 99% of the controls.
Yeah.
95 maybe.
Cool. Sorry, Joel, for a bit jumping there and asking you to do some extra. We'll add the links to the community call summary.